Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Microsoft 365 Development Bi-Weekly Call. Today I'm your host. I'm Paolo Pialorsi from psys.com, and today is the Microsoft 365 Development Bi-Weekly Call of July the 8th. So welcome again. Quick view at the agenda. We will go through all of the latest news about PnP Framework, PnP Core SDK, PnP PowerShell, YoTeams, and Graph Toolkit, Microsoft Graph Toolkit. We will have some news about new tools and websites that we introduced recently to help people work and develop solutions on top of Microsoft 365. And of course, we will have a couple of demos, one about list formatting magic by Chris Kent, and another one about configuring Teams application with Azure by Marcus Muller from Avanade. As you know, now we are almost in the summer break, so the format and the timing of these meetings will be a bit more relaxed than usual. So most likely we might even end the meeting earlier than usual. In fact, we just have a couple of demos instead of the regular 3 demos that we are used to have. But it's all good. It's summer. We have less people. We need to rest a bit and to enjoy the summer break. So let's move to the real content and focus on the real topics. First of all, just as a reminder, I want to remember you that you can contribute to the community in multiple ways. And for sure, one is to provide demos or technical solutions and patterns in these calls. So if you have something that you want to share, that you're proud of, and you want to share with the community, feel free to reach out to the PnP team, either using email, Twitter, or whatever you like to use. And let us know that you have something that you want to share and to present to the whole community. Remember that all of the demos will be also recorded and shared as videos in the Microsoft 365 YouTube channel. So you will have a huge audience following your demo live during the call and offline using the YouTube channel. You can also contribute to GitHub if you like, and you are kindly invited to do that. There are plenty of options and plenty of repositories on GitHub where you can contribute to, and we are always looking for people willing to share their time and their efforts with the whole community to improve all of the offerings and all of the libraries and samples that we have available for free on GitHub. And of course, you can also provide your feedback if you like. So if you want to let us know what you think, again, you can use GitHub, you can use the issues list in GitHub, or again, you can use the social network and specifically Twitter to let us know your feedback and to let the community know what you think and what you need. That said, and specifically talking about some of the content that we have available for the community and by the community, we have a huge set of videos available in the Microsoft 365 Developer Videos YouTube channel. You see here the AKMS link to go there, as well as the Microsoft 365 community videos available in AKMS M365 PnP/videos. Plenty of open source projects and solutions, including repositories under the SharePoint organization, the PnP organization, Office Dev, and Microsoft Graph one, and plenty of galleries. We have been working quite heavily in the last fiscal year. I'm talking like Microsoft folks do so in the last fiscal year. So from June last year to June, end of June this year, we introduced quite some new galleries to let people find examples, code samples, and solutions that they take inspiration from in order to build their own solution. And if you want to have a recap of all of the goods available in PnP, for sure you can go to aka.ms/m365pnp, and there you can find the entry point almost to everything that we have available for the whole community as PnP. There are some news about the schedule of the community calls, generally speaking, and not only thinking about the just the PnP community calls. And specifically, as I just said, we are in the summer break. So from July to August, we will not have all of the meetings that we were used to have during the regular time frame, but we will still have the community calls on Thursday, like we are having right now. And starting from the end of August, so from early September, we will have a new schedule for the Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Graph, and SharePoint monthly calls. So we will simply have on Tuesday a Microsoft 365 engineering call rather than multiple options, which were also every now and then overlapping one with the other. So we think this is helpful and beneficial for the community. As I was telling you before, we have new tools and websites available for developers in order to learn what you can do with Microsoft 365 and how you can do that with Microsoft 365. And for example, we recently introduced the Microsoft 365 Extensibility Lookbook Gallery. We introduced almost a couple of years ago the SharePoint Lookbook site where you can see and use site templates. In the Extensibility Lookbook, we have a focus on how to extend Microsoft 365 divided by product, by type of application, by scenario. You can search, you can see what you can do, and you can get access to samples that you can easily reuse or take inspiration from. AKMS and 365 Extensibility is the entry point to get there. We also have the list of samples for developing Microsoft Teams solutions. So AKMS Teams samples is the place to go if you want to dig into Microsoft Teams development, regardless the technology you want to use to develop on top of Microsoft Teams. And if you are more on the IT pro side and you want to automate management and processes in Microsoft 365 and in your tenants, we have another new gallery, which is the script samples gallery, where you can find a bunch of examples of scripts with PnP CLI, PnP PowerShell, and all the tooling that we have as a community to script and to manage our tenants and our workloads in Microsoft 365. Again, AKMS/script samples is the URL. Moreover, David, what about the Sharing is Caring initiative?
Thank you, Paolo. So Sharing is Caring is an initiative, friends, that is here to assist you with any endeavors to join our community from a collaborative and contribution perspective. We are an open source and inclusive community, which means that you can contribute back as well as use all the resources available to you. But we know that there are some hurdles and blockers to that. So things like how to get involved with GitHub, what's a pull request, how do you process it, how do you use SPFX and the different versions of Node, how do you get involved as a presenter. All of these topics are covered in the Sharing is Caring sessions, which are live, hands-on sessions. They are safe space opportunities, not recorded at all. So we invite you to join any one of them. We'd love to see you and help you get more involved in the community. And just a shout out, next week is the Ask Me Anything with the topic themed Teams development with Victor and Bob as our guests. So go in and join aka.ms. Sharing is Caring. We'd love to see you at a future session.
And David, let me ask you a question. Is there any way to get a recognition of what people can do and do for the community? Can we help them to be recognized for what they do?
That is an amazing question, Paolo. I'm so glad you asked. We now have the PnP Recognition Program. Now, this is a brand new, first of its kind in any community, powered by Credly. It is going to provide digital badges for recognition. These are formal badges that are going to show up right next to your Microsoft certification badges. Now, this is just getting started. We just have a couple available, but we're going to continue to have fresh campaigns, exciting opportunities, limited edition badges, and all that as we get further into the year. We do need you to opt in and register, so please go to aka.ms/M365PnP-recognition. And be patient with us. It is a manual process right now as we start to get all those badges out, but we're really excited. This is going to be an amazing opportunity for the community to get more recognition, and we really appreciate all your efforts. Paolo, back to you.
Thank you, David, and thank you for this great initiative, because the PnP Recognition Program is something which I really love, and I think it will be really successful. It is already really successful. So, talking about the libraries and the goods that we provide as PnP, for sure we need to see what the news about PnP libraries are. And so, thinking about the PnP framework and the PnP Core SDK, again, we are in a kind of a summer break, so we are moving slower than usual, but still we are processing some of the PRs from the community folks. We also are working on implementing in the PnP framework support for the new PnP provisioning engine schema that we introduced just a few weeks ago. And I want to be really clear. We really would like to have some help from the community in this area, because we introduced quite some new functionalities in the new schema. But now the schema is released, but we still need to implement all of the logic behind the scenes in the provisioning engine. So if you have some spare time, it might be that in summer you have some time that you can give as a gift to the community. Please do that. Reach out to me or to Erwin or Bert, or generally speaking, let us know through the issue list in the GitHub repository of PnP Framework, and we will try to manage something and to let you help us to develop the new functionalities in the provisioning engine. In the upcoming weeks, of course, there will be vacation time, but we will take care of pull requests, improvements, and bug fixing. And we are targeting to release a new version of PnP Framework right after the summer break. The same story applies to PnP Core SDK, where we processed some of the PRs and we fixed and improved some of the stuff, but we are also working on improving the documentation, and we are working on a refactoring and re-architecting of the transformation framework or modernization framework, which hopefully will see the light, at least in preview, in late summer or early September. And what about PnP PowerShell? I think my friend Erwin is here, so please, Erwin.
Yep, I'm here. Yep. So just like Paolo mentioned, also vacation time here in the Nordics, life basically comes to a standstill, so we can really enjoy the 2 days of summer that we have here. Not much happening is in PnP PowerShell currently. What are we using the time for currently? We are prototyping here and there, because we're thinking of making some heavy changes, not that will not affect you directly, but might affect you in the future. And I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, if not longer, that we're looking into changing what PnP PowerShell outputs to you, the type of objects. Right now, many commandlets return CSAM objects. We want to change that to our own objects for various reasons, but right now CSAM is holding us back, which is very annoying at times. We want to use all kinds of functionality that is provided to us by the PnP core library, but that one doesn't use CSAM. And yeah, we cannot upgrade our commandlets because they are required to return CSAM, because you have scripts depending on that. So we're prototyping a bit here with maybe providing you with an option to, we're not 100% sure yet, but an option that you provide a little switch on Connect PnP Online, and then you will get the new behavior versus the old behavior. And that's something that most likely gradually will be introduced. But before we start to throw that into the wild, after the summer, in the autumn time frame, or if you're in the southern hemisphere, your spring, we will probably set up a community call, like a 1 hour call dedicated to this topic, where we talk this through with you and gather feedback from you and see how much this would affect you, if this would affect you, if it would provide a workable solution for you or not. It will be an enormous amount of work for us, because we will have to go through more than 500 commandlets and start to fix those or update those. So it will be a major release. It will not come just in a nightly build. But that's what we're working on right now.
Thank you, Erwin. So now let's move to your teams. I think Victor should be able to share with us some news about what's happening there.
Yeah, so as all the previous speakers said, it's really nice weather here in Sweden, so I don't spend that much time in the evenings here, and also it's been the Euro soccer watching in the evening. So there's not been any big updates since last time. We do have the previews out, or the final preview isn't really out for the Yo teams yet, but some of the supporting NPM packages are out for with support for universal actions in adaptive cards, and there's some really great blog posts out there. So you all can hope for a few rainy days in the next few weeks, and I'll have a good set of previews and some nice updates out there for you all. And as you can see, the usage is still increasing. And as I said last time as well, is some parts are thanks to the Teams toolkit, where we're using the same kind of components here. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Victor. So next up, the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. I guess we have someone from Microsoft sharing some news about the Graph Toolkit.
Yeah, so June was kind of quiet for us for bug fixing some new features because the team has been working hard in collaboration with the Fluent UI web components to align our web components together. So keep an eye out for those. But for those of you who doesn't know what Microsoft Graph Toolkit is, it's a reusable web component library and authentication providers that help you easily connect and work with Microsoft Graph. There are a couple of ways to help us improve new things that's coming, including adding upload file functionalities to MGT file list. There are issues and PRs open for this, and then we're working with a sister team to work on a new component for MGT search as well. So check out those PRs and issues and give us feedback and let us know what you would like to see in those new component, and then check out the good first issues.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you so much. So I think our friend Bob is willing to share with us something about the team samples, right, Bob?
Yeah, we have a really cool new sample this week. And I want to thank Satya, and forgive me if I say the names wrong, Satya Ravindran and Veera Vantaka Saipotan Bota, who created this sample, which really highlights something you don't see that much, but it's a huge power of Teams development, which is device access. So this app actually runs in, it's called Reporter Plus, and it's about reporting problems with company assets. So you can go to your asset, take a QR scan of the asset tag, it brings it up on the screen. You can then use the device's camera and annotate and even the microphone to capture details about what's happening with the device. And then there's a people picker and an approval workflow for getting the problem resolved. So really, really cool. Check it out at aka.ms/app-reporter plus. And I'm working with the team to actually get them on a future one of these calls so we can actually see it in action. And
thank you,
please
Bob.
send more samples. We love your pull requests. Keep them coming. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Bob. Thank you so much. So next step for today is the together mode picture. So let me switch to the together mode. Let me share with the whole community all of our wonderful faces, and let me start the recording. So we are now recording. Come on, people, don't be shy. Share your face, share your hands, and wave. Okay, so let me turn on my camera too, just in case. I didn't want to get the place of someone else. Okay, I think we are fine, so wave. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, and enjoy the summer, of course. So let me move back to this screen. And it is now time for all of the demos, actually the 2 demos that we have on schedule for today. So first of all, Chris Kent, let's make some magic with list formatting. Feel free to take the stage and share your demo.
Thanks, everybody. All right, then let's get started. I'm Chris. Woo! All right, so we're going to talk about an image column type today. So traditionally, we've had, if you want to do an image as a column in your SharePoint list, right, you're going to do, it's basically just a hyperlink column, right? You'll choose hyperlink or picture, but really all you're doing is linking an image from somewhere else, whether it's in your SharePoint site or somewhere else, right? And when you do this, you can set a description, right? And in formatting, you can access that through the DESC subproperty. And nice thing is you can edit in grid view. Very exciting. About June of last year, 2020, and I think it rolled out by October, so everybody should have it by now, across Office 365, is the new image column type. This is where we're going to upload those images directly, and they're going to be stored in your site assets library. Now, there's a ton of sub-properties we can get to in list formatting, which we're going to take a look at here. And just one thing, it cannot be edited in grid view. You're going to have to edit it in that form. All right, so all that being said, let's take a look at how we can take advantage of the image column and how we might format that. So we head over to our traditional Warrior Horses site. We're just going to pick on a list. We'll pick agents here. You know, so we've got a nice normal list here, lots of different formatting. Let's scale that up just slightly. All right, and let's say we want to add a new column. And this time we're going to choose image. So traditionally, again, you would choose something like hyperlink, right? And then you would choose the type or wherever, picture. I don't remember where the option is anymore. Does not matter because we're looking at the image, right? And so we choose image here. So the image is type, and we're just going to call this pretty. That sounds exciting. All right, call it whatever you want. But the idea is here we add pretty image. And then when we edit these items, so again, if I just kind of open this up here, I go to pretty and add an image directly. It's going to open up. I can upload an image right here. So in this case, I'm going to say traditional horse hug. I'm going to upload that. It's going to show up right there. I close this. Let's add just a couple more, just so we've got a couple extras here, so we can see what's going on. Let's add another image. Let's pick another beautiful image here of a horse. Let's just say, where's the evil eye horses? Perfect. Okay. All right, so now we've got a couple of them here, and that's cool. And so traditionally, you know, the out-of-the-box formatting on these is going to show just a tiny little icon. And when you click that, it's going to open that image almost full screen. It actually has a maximum size of 3,000 by 2,000 in a new window. And that's cool, right? I mean, that's a huge benefit. And if we actually look where these are stored, right, we'll actually see that they're in the site assets library with in a folder called lists, with a folder with the GUID of the list ID here. One thing to note is that if you swap that column out or use the picture again, it's going to upload it again. If you delete the image off of the list item, it's not going to delete it out of the site assets library. So that's just some fun facts for you. Okay, but what if we want to format this? All right, so I've got my column settings. I'm going to format this column, and I've got this beautiful box here. Let's make this slightly bigger. All right, what can I do with this? All right, so if I say Elm type, all right, we'll just make it a div for now, which doesn't make a ton of sense. We'll say text content, right? We're going to say at current field, right? Take a look at that. Object, so we know it's got sub-properties. So there's a number of sub-properties, and we'll take a look at them in a minute, but like you could say like file name, for instance. There we go. Now we have that file name there, so we can get that out of the image. We can also do things like, you know, server relative URL, all right, which there you go. And you can actually see, just like we talked about, it's in that site assets folder inside the list with your GUID and all that. And if you wanted to change that around, you wanted to say this was a, you know, now it's an image, and instead of text content, we're going to say attributes. And I'm going to say source. Let's just copy this thing out. We don't have that there. Don't need text content for an image, right? This might be the traditional way you would do this. All right, you do something like that. Maybe you want to be a little fancy. You want to make sure it works inside Teams. So you say equals, say at current web plus, right? You can preview that. And we got to add the slash, because you know that makes sense. Okay, so we add a plus here, but the idea here is we can do kind of a traditional. Well, we'll ignore what I'm doing here. There's also a server URL we can use. Okay. Point though is we've got several sub-properties, but there's also this whole other area of sub-properties called the thumbnail renderer, which we're going to take a look at. And thumbnail renderer's got things like the SP item URL. It's got a sponsor token. It's got a file version. It's got a bunch of extra stuff that we can use. So what if we wanted to do kind of a traditional? We wanted to at least map what they were doing, right? So if you recall, what they were doing is just a box here. All right. So if we wanted to map that or kind of imitate that, we've got a format here. And everything I'm pulling out here, by the way, is part of a Lightbox sample, originally put together by, I'm going to say it wrong, Jalfiario. I'll just mumble it enough and you'll get it right. We'll take a look at that sample in a minute. But the idea here is if I do that, right, it doesn't look a lot different. All I've really done is I've got that same image, I put a cursor, but instead I'm doing this fancy thing here where I'm accessing the thumbnail renderer as an SP item URL. right? I'm going to the thumbnail. I'm saying the first thumbnail index 0. I've got a custom size of 48 by 48. I'm going very fast on all of this kind of craziness here that's happening. All of this is using the underlying SharePoint version 2 REST API, which is really just using graph. So you can actually check out what's happening here when it's getting that kind of drive option. So if we take a look at what that looks like here, we just left it F12 to inspect that. We hit F12, right? And we go to inspect that guy, which is now very tiny. You can just see this sucker. All right, but the idea here is you can actually see what it generated. All right, so it's going in, it's got that drives link, and it's got a bunch of ugly GUID type stuff. But the whole idea is it's taking care of all that for you. And again, all I did, or all we're doing, is grabbing the Thumbnail renderer sub property and getting its sub objects there. Mostly just cut and paste this, right? But the idea here is if we look at this API, we see we've got some different options, mostly around sizing. All right, so you see we've got, not that guy. There we go. So we've got this custom 48 by 48 here. All right, we could change that. Instead of custom, we could say, just have one of their default sizes like small. We preview that. We're going to see that it's going to come in at 96 by 96, but we've got it cut off in this box here just because we've got the overflow hidden. But we can do small, we can do small square, we can jump up to large. There's a lot there. Let's take a look at the sizes a little more here in a second because that's okay. What if we want to go a little further, right? So let's get rid of that. Let's go back to that custom 48 by 48. Just so we've got that sucker. There we go. Beautiful. Now, if we want to kind of add a little bit to that. So this is where that Lightbox sample comes in. Instead of the traditional, we want to open in a new window. We want to keep everything right here. So I'm going to copy and paste another part of this format. And the only real difference here is we've got our image, the same kind of thing here, but we have a custom card. So we've got a hover card here. And all we're doing with the hover card is we've got an image inside that hover card. And here we're going to take that and we're going to go a little more elaborate. So we've got the exact same image, but now we're going to go with the medium. So if we preview that, we can see we get this interesting, ignore the, it had a little trouble with the first render. There it is. That's just because we're doing the formatting window with that beak. But you can see now we've got a nice little thumbnail, right? So traditionally, you might want to make that a lot bigger, right? So instead of medium, again, this is where we're going to mess with those. Right, so small is 96 by 96, medium is 176 by 176, and large jumps up to 800 by 800. So not a lot in between. All right, so there we go. Now we've got a really big one. All right, and if we wanted to do custom, right, we kind of saw that before. We type a C and then we type in our width. So in this case, we're going to say, I don't know, 300. And we're going to say our height. So put a little X there, and our height is also, we're going to say 300. Now it's going to keep our aspect ratio. So when we preview that, all right, we're going to see that it's just going to take the longest side and it's going to make that 300 pixels and then the height's going to be whatever. Now, if we wanted it exactly 300 by 300, right? In other words, we don't care about this aspect ratio. We can actually add an underscore crop on the end. Now, when we preview that, take a look at that. It's actually going to crop it so we have an exact square. So you can get the exact same, exact size you want there. So there's a lot of flexibility in this kind of image sizing and how it comes about. So that's cool. Right. So what if we want to go, slightly further than that? Right. What if we wanted this to be a little more dynamic, our size? Right. We're not quite sure, what people are dealing with. Right. If they've got an old 15-inch monitor that's set to, like 800 pixels, is this max or whatever? Right. What if we wanted to take advantage of that? So we wanted to then set this size kind of dynamically. We can do that. So all we're really doing is building the string. You see these little pluses with the single quotes. So we can actually break that up. So instead of custom here, we can delete those guys, the key pieces. And let's just add the pluses, right? Just so we don't lose any of that. I'm going to get rid of this crop. There we go. Now, if we want to insert our own values in here, we can. So we could say things like ceiling, because we don't want, I will say this, one thing this doesn't do is does not accept decimals. So you can't, have any kind of piece there. So when you ceiling, make sure we have an integer. I'm going to say at window dot inner width, right? So this is going to give us at the time of drawing the inner width of the actual window, and we're going to say no bigger than half that size. All right, and we're going to do the same thing for the height. We're going to say plus, and we're going to say ceiling, and we're going to say at window dot inner height. Right. Oh, and I think it looks like we forgot a plus up here. That a try. We'll see if we got that right. There we go. So the idea here is it is constraining it. Now it's hard to see a little bit. So let's save this and let's refresh everything so we get that new window height drawn into the way we expected. All right, so now we've got this. It's kind of limiting the size exactly. You can do a little more with that. But if we were to say like F12 this guy, just so we can get a smaller window, all right, I'm going to refresh that. So it re-renders and has the new window height. When we click that, you'll see it is responding and it's automatically given it smaller. All right, so by taking advantage of those inner width and inner height in our custom sizing, we can make sure that things, fit pretty well here. Now, normally though, a light box is used to show, the full size image, right? But now we're trying to constrain that because we don't want to overwhelm if you have a gigantic image, right? So one of the things we might want to do is provide a link. So we can do that as well. All right, so we're going to grab this guy. We don't need this part anymore. And we're going to just go here. We're going to go column settings. We're going to format this column. I'm going to paste the next version of this, which again, if we kind of expand that out so we can see the only real difference here now. So we have that same image, right? We've got that ceiling. We've got all that kind of coming out. But now we have this link. We're going to kind of absolutely position on the bottom right. That's going to open it up in a new window, just like the other one did. So if we preview that, we can see now we've got this nice little button, and when we click that, it's going to open that same image in a whole new window. And the idea here is now you can do a lot with these image columns, right? So the image columns are really powerful because it's very hard to get even strong power users to understand. Go to a document library, upload images, copy that link, go to your list, paste that link, right? There's a lot of steps there that are very easy to mess up. And especially if they copy the wrong image, right? They might have copied an asset link that works for a day, but then that token will expire, and now their thumbnail no longer works. So an image column is a huge step up in terms of usability. So we want to also take advantage of that in terms of our formatting. So by using all these kind of sub-properties, we can have a lot of power and a lot of control over all this. So all of those samples are available. And let's take a look, kind of wrap up here. All right, so here's all of those image sub-properties, right? So we mentioned this idea of file name, which one is the one you probably use a lot. And then if you're trying to do any kind of custom sizes, you'll skip all of the rest of these and jump into the thumbnail renderer. For examples of how those links are put together, please take a look at the samples. That's a lot easier to take a look at. But again, you can also consult the Graph API for how to get to the content of a drive item. Great. Okay. So drive thumbnail sizes, we kind of mentioned those here. Again, those are listed in kind of the Graph API documentation. And these are helpful, but the primary helpful ones here are these width and height. Although keep in mind, if you wanted to just do a cropped version yourself of the small, medium, or large, you can add square with a capital S on the end and it will crop it automatically. Otherwise, it's going to keep that original ratio just like you expected before. Okay, so check out the full documentation here. Check out this awesome sample, the image lightbox, that's going to have the advanced version as well with kind of that link out and the custom sizing. But that's about it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. So it is now time for Markus Möller from Avanet to talk about how to configure Teams application with Azure App Configuration and Key Vault. So Markus, feel free to share your screen.
Today, I want to talk about how to configure Microsoft Teams applications with Azure App Configuration and Azure Key Vault. Quick introduction on myself. For those who don't know me, Markus Möller. I'm a Microsoft 365 developer expert, and I work for Avanet in Germany. And you can reach me on Twitter or via my blog post. So let's quickly jump into the demo. First, I want to show you a small Teams messaging extension, which posts a selected file to a message channel, and then we will have a look into the Azure resources that are helping us to configure that on an enterprise-ready level. We have a quick and simple messaging extension here, and when we kick this off, there are several samples also provided, not only by me, but also by me on this or that scenario. And here I do it really, really simple in that case. So we retrieve a bunch of files from a specific location, and once we pick one, we can post this to the message channel, and we can do further stuff with that. We could also implement it more, but that's not the real important thing for today. The question now is, first, from where do we get these files, and how does our application know that? And the second thing, of course, as nearly always in enterprise applications, how do we authorize to access those files or any other kind of resources. So to configure that, Teams messaging extensions provide an option to enable configuration. And once this is enabled, you can reach it via a secondary mouse click on the icon, for instance. And then we click on settings. And once we do that, a custom configuration page gets rendered, which we are responsible for implementing that. In my case, I did it with several options. On the one hand, you can provide a site and a list ID to get a specific library being responsible for serving the files. And the alternative would be to say, hey, we want to go with search and retrieve the files with search instead. And all these things, once we press OK, will be configured in the background, and then the sample can run again. This is all to show here. So how does this look like in Azure? In Azure, first, we have the so-called app configuration resource. And this is the alternative for the classic app settings or web.config. Yeah? And the benefits are here, of course, that here a user would be able to write to it. And also you could share configuration values across several applications. In my case, I'm using the Teams action config. And here we can quickly run into the configuration explorer. And here we see that we have a list ID, we have a site ID. We also have a value about how to use search or the search query, which I just showed in the UI. Yeah. Of course, as you can also see from here, it would be a better practice to not use that short names, but more to use some kind of a namespace, because here in this case, I'm really sharing the configuration resource for in between different applications. And for this Node.js demo, for instance, it's much better to be detected. The second thing is what we are using, of course, is the authentication and the authorization in the background. And therefore, we regularly use things like app IDs or application secrets. And those you would not store mainly in a simple Azure app configuration, but here Azure Key Vault is the way to go. And this is here, but slightly the same resource, or at least it looks like. And in this case, we have several options to store. We can store keys, we can store secrets or certificates. In my case, I have some secrets here. In that case, it's two for this application. Yeah, we have the graph application secret and one secret for the Microsoft App Pass. This is a connection to the bot channel in the background. How does now the app service use that or access it? Yeah, here's my app service where my application is hosted. And once I click on that, I can first see a quick notation for the key vault. When I go to my classic application configuration, here I give you one example where the Microsoft app password refers to the Microsoft Key Vault. I will show you that in a bit better mode. Come on. Here, this is a notation how you can directly access the Key Vault from your app service. Yeah, there we know no piece of code for that. Yeah, but I will also show you code when you need code, and I will show you that in 2-3 minutes. And the last thing I want to quickly give an introduction and explain a bit later is the authentication from this app service to the resources like Key Vault and app configuration. And this takes place on behalf of Microsoft Managed Identity. And here you have nothing else to do than on the one hand, click on the identity tab of the service who's consuming something, enable the managed identity. And once you do that, you have an object inside your Azure Active Directory, which you can then grant access to on the Key Vault or on the app configuration file. And this is what you do here in the access control tab. And this is from the demo side. just a simple wrap up as an architecture, what we are doing. So we have our web application here, which is in fact a whole Teams application. And this one is hosted in our Azure App Service, and the configuration mainly takes place in the Azure App Configuration resource, and the secrets and credentials are stored inside Azure Key Vault. And last but not least, with that, what we can do is we can authenticate and get our data from Microsoft Graph and the whole Microsoft 365 ecosystem, if it's SharePoint, OneDrive, Outlook, whatever we need. So how does this work now in code? In the opposite, the first thing is, how does Teams handle the requests in terms of a configuration? So this is the middleware of my Teams messaging extension. And once I right-click on the app icon and request the settings page, which I did here, the on-query settings URL, this function is called. And in that case, now I retrieve my config and use that config to render a Teams task module. And this is what I return as an URL here. If the task module submits the configuration back to Teams, the onSettings function is called. And here, then I persist my config. So how does this then look in detail? So we have put this to a utilities class, and we will go now into the details for that. In the utilities class, we have first a retrieve config function. This first needs to establish a client. Yeah? This client is there to grant access to the resource. And once we have the access, we can simply retrieve our values with the get configuration setting and providing a name for that. And then we have an object where the value is the main interest, which we will use. In this case here, we use the site ID and the list ID and so on and so forth. The thing would be how to establish this client. And here I commented out the easy way. Yeah, the easy way would simply be to establish a so-called default Azure credential and together with a connection string, instantiate the app configuration client. And this is the easy way. And behind the scenes, this default Azure credential handles the different cases you could have, because you can have your app running in Azure, but you can also have it running locally in debug mode or something. And those two options I show here in the code in detail below. Yeah? If I'm running locally, I would have an Azure client secret here in my environment variables, and then I will establish an environment credential. And with that, I get my app configuration client. And in Azure, where I don't have this client secret and client ID corresponding, then I simply get a so-called managed identity credential, nothing else, and establish the same. It's as easy as that. So a short explanation how this works, to visualize once again, is if you have any kind of resource, you regularly need credentials to access them. And how to store them? You would regularly put this to a credential storage. You do this on your laptop as well with KeePass or something similar. And to compare this with your laptop, on your local desktop, you now need a password to access this. Yeah. But is this a solution? Because then we would have a chain and again and again. And to cut off the chain here, we have the managed identity. And the managed identity has no real password because it's taking place inside the same Azure subscription. It's able to authenticate itself against the resource to consume, so the app configuration store or the Azure keyword. Last but not least, the opposite of get a configuration value, of course, in this case would be the save configuration value. But yeah, this is quite the same as we have already seen. Yeah, we already have seen how to establish a client, and then we will use the set configuration setting. And here we do not only need the name, but we also need the value to store. It's the only opposite. The rest is the same as already seen. This was for Azure App Configuration, and for Azure Key Vault, it's also quite the same. There's only one difference, and it's the client. Yeah? So what's the same? The same is we have to establish a client, and then we have to get a value by providing a name. This is more or less the same. And only the client is different because this is it's not an app configuration client anymore. In this case, it's not a keyboard client. There are different clients for the different resources. In my case, I'm using only it for secrets, so I use the secret client. If I would use certificates or so, there would be a corresponding certificate client. But the authentication, once again, runs quite the same. And here's, once again, the short version, establishing a default Azure credential, and then getting the client. And of course, we also need a connection string for that. This is simply the resource URL, which you can grab from your Azure resource. So where do I use that in action? I use that in action in my backend service where I'm getting the files. And here I'm getting my files. And first, I retrieve my configuration. And once I have that, I get an access token. I'll come to that back later. And then I will check if I use search. And then I will use my search query. And then I will kick off a method for that. And the other option would be to provide the whole configuration object to my getFilesBySite method, where in the background, I'm simply constructing a URL from site ID, list ID, blah, 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 what you've seen. Interestingly, to jump there is the exchange for token, because when we come to that function, I put it here. This is the on behalf flow, which I'm running here. And therefore, I need my app secret to create my token. And this is what I'm receiving here first. And then I will hand this over to my URL and post it, get my access token on behalf. And with that access token, I can go on and run the methods, which you have seen here. Get files by search with the access token or that one. One last bonus slide, not really relating to the topic, but as it's quite new and not that much used and documented, is also to show how I retrieve the files by search. This is the following endpoint from Microsoft Graph, the search query endpoint. And in the request body, I provide, in my case, that I want to have list items, not drive items, because I'm using the metadata. Then I hand over a search query. And I'm asking for several fields to be returned. And last but not least, very important in this case, although I retrieve only, I have to post all that stuff against Microsoft Graph. That's it from my side. As always, some resources. This Azure App Configuration sample is documented in a blog post on my site. I also provided this as a PnP sample just 2 or 3 weeks ago. I did some updates to that, promised to submit another PR for that. So the search query, for instance, is not in that yet, but I will publish this soon. Takes a while always for me. Then some documentation on Azure App Configuration and also how to treat this in Node.js, because it is unfortunately not directly linked. Azure Key Vault documented, and then the SSO topic described by Victor a while ago. I know he's already working on a simplification of that. He demonstrated this, I think it was 1 or 2 weeks ago. Hope to release it soon and put the pieces together. And last but not least, also a post as a side note from my side on how to use the search with Microsoft Graph. Yeah, that's it from my side.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Thank you to Marcus and Chris for their great demos. And as I said, today will be a more relaxed community call. So we are not planning to hit the hour, but most likely we will give you back a few more minutes to rest or to stay with your family today. So I just want to say thank you to the whole community, and of course to David for your support, and to the other community members for sharing the updates on the tools and libraries. Remember that the recording of this video will be available in 24 hours from now in the Microsoft 365 community YouTube channel. And the next Microsoft 365 General Dev call will be on July 22nd at 7 a.m. Pacific time. Next week, July 15th, we will have at the same time, so 7 a.m. Pacific time, the SharePoint Framework community call. So stay tuned and enjoy these community calls where you can learn and share content with the whole community. I also want to remember you about some of the useful links that we have available for the community to learn more about adaptive cards, Microsoft Graph, and all the other stuff that you can build and develop on top of Microsoft 365. And that said, I think we can get back a few minutes and we can go back to our business or to our family and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you, everyone, again.